Welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club's Fireside Chat. The club's purpose is to engage the power of diverse worldwide talent to accelerate the global evolution to Industry 4.0. We accomplish this by hosting and supporting respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary open conversations and creating quality content on wide-ranging Industry 4.0 topics to expand the reach of our community. My name is Mike Ungar, and I'm the CEO of the Industry 4.0 Club. I have over 40 years of experience, with most of that being in manufacturing at Michelin. I'm joined today by my co-host, Mike Yost. Welcome, Mike. Mike, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. Sure. As Mike said, my name is Mike Yost. I'm the volunteer chairman of the Industry 4.0 Club and Mike's co-host for our regular series of these broadcasts. I've been in industry for about 35 years, with the last 15 years on the industrial nonprofit side. And so look forward to continuing to drive the conversations that we're having as we are having here today. And today we have the pleasure to be joined by Cici Bevin, who's the president of Bevin Brothers Manufacturing. Cici is going to be speaking at the MD&M East event in New York on May 20th, 2025. And the title of her presentation is 200 Years, It Is Never Too Late to Start Your Smart Manufacturing Journey. So just for a quick background, Cici serves as the president of Bevin Brothers Manufacturing. She's the first female president of the sixth generation family company. That's the only bell manufacturer in the U.S., making over 50 different styles and sizes of bells. Additionally, 50% of Bevin Brothers Manufacturing is comprised of gas cylinders. Cici spent much of her career in sales, marketing, and crisis management. Crisis communications for consumer goods, from sports equipment to food. She joined the almost 200-year-old family business in 2016, and today serves as the president, overseeing manufacturing operations, sales, and many other daily challenges that come with running two different factories and three distinct product lines. With a focus on the future and how to triple the size of the company by the 200th anniversary in 2032. Cici's working towards a company built on smarter manufacturing and increased production while seeking strong profitability. So welcome, Cici.
Thank you very much. I think that sums it up well.
Well, we're really glad you could take some time out of your busy schedule to join us. So first of all, maybe we could get started and you could tell us a little bit about Bevin Bells. What's it like working for a company with such a long tradition and heritage?
Well, for me, I'm just extremely proud to be able to be a part of the history of Bevin Brothers and to be able to take part in it and put my unique stamp on the company. It wasn't an opportunity I, thought I would necessarily be able to do. And so I feel very blessed to have been able to join the company in 2016. And I think my major focus, while I love the history of our company and I love being a part of the multi-generational legacy, I think my whole focus is on the future and how do we take this very old company and make it, modernize it, make it very relevant and keep it very profitable and active for hopefully another 200 years. We'll see.
No, that's great. So I guess it's interesting when you say you're the only bell manufacturer in North America or the United States, or both there?
Both, yeah.
Both. So were there others before, or just that you're the only one that's managed to stake a claim and be successful?
No, in fact, we're in a town in Connecticut called East Hampton, Connecticut. It's right in the dead center of the state below Hartford. At one time, there were probably as many as 20 or more bell manufacturers here in East Hampton. So our little town is called Belltown, and our high school mascot are the bell ringers. And on every street sign is a picture of a bell. So it was the epicenter of bell making in the United States. And you know how that goes when like one person, is an indentured servant to another, and then they open their company, back in the day. But so we are the only surviving bell factory in the United States.
That's just inspiring to hear. It's such a great story to hear, and then also with your eye to the future, right? You're talking about looking forward into the future. So I'm curious. The title of your session is going to be "Never Too Late to Start a your smart manufacturing journey. So can you talk a little bit about either what motivated you to pursue smart manufacturing, or how you define it, or how you think it's relevant?
Well, I think the thing that really motivated me to do it was this idea of not necessarily just transforming the company, but trying to make it profitable and very relevant and growing. And when I wanted to put a stake in the ground to say, by our 200th anniversary, we will be 3 times the size that we are now, we obviously can't continue to do that as a company firmly planted in the 1950s, as I like to say. We need to improve. But really what my talk is going to focus on is the world of opportunity out there. Where do you even begin with this kind of thing? And I go back to my first days of walking into this company and looking at how we just put the little loop on top of the bell, so you have a bell like this and every bell has a loop on top of it. And hundreds of thousands of times a year, somebody puts each one of those on by hand, one at a time. And, you say to yourself, that is clinically insane. Like, this needs to change. And, so I immediately get people in who make robots and cobots and, all of this kind of thing. And then you start to do the math of what my minimum wage employee that sits there and does that, what I'm paying them and what it's going to cost me to automate or semi-automate these processes. And suddenly you're looking at a 7 to 10 or 12 year payback period. And I'm like, okay, this honestly doesn't make sense. And then so then it starts to all spiral from there. Okay, if I'm going to triple the size of my business, where are my bottlenecks going to be? What are they going to be? Where are they going to come from? And just so many opportunities. It can be overwhelming.
I think your story about cobots and robots and the payback, I think a lot of companies fall victim to like a technology, like, oh my goodness, I can put this in here and I'll get a return, when in fact you look at it in some depth and you begin to ask yourself, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't do this, because it's easy to be sold a shiny new toy, So what motivated you to step back then from the robots and cobots and think more about the strategy?
So then I started to look at every other, facility and people, and do I just put in a second one of those machines and have a second body there doing it and that type of thing. But what really motivated me the most was learning about Sesame, which is the organization that is, dedicated to promoting smart manufacturing here in this country, and learning about Sesame, working through their assessment process and framework process and all of that, and then starting to help make all of these steps that we need to take much more manageable and figure out, and to help us with a cadence of what might make sense first. So, we were not ISO certified. We're now, close to the, finishing touches of being ISO certified in the next, 60 days or so, things like that. So there's really, those kinds of things had to come before we could really grow some of the other aspects of our business. So it's helping to take a step back, we just kind of put on paper everything, all of our different opportunities, and what can we bite off, each time.
I think, Cici, that is a super compelling point that you make, that I hope everybody hears and lets sink in. There's nobody that's out there selling smart manufacturing as a path toward, ISO certification, right? And so you're looking at your business, where you're growing, what your high level objective is, and then aligning your organization on a path that includes that as stepping stones. So I think it's really, really compelling and really powerful. Could you maybe talk about the process you went through with Sesame? We're very familiar with Sesame. We talk about their vision and their tools and such quite a good bit, but people are not going to believe it coming from us as much as they would coming from you. So maybe a little bit about why it's important and sort of the process you went through with creating a roadmap.
Yeah, I feel like I could be a huge advocate for what they can do and how they've helped us. And it's hard to overstate the value that has brought to our company and to my thinking specifically, because we started out by taking this assessment, which is, an hour. It took an hour probably. And we did, my head of production and I did that individually. And then Sesame takes a look at that. People at the organization, and they give you an assessment of where you are. And I can tell you where we were on the journey of smart manufacturing. I knew it before I even took the assessment, but I'm like, I guess I have to take this assessment anyway, just to get started with the process. And from that sets you up for, which areas do you really need to focus on. And I think that the other thing that has happened to us as a result of that is also sort of the permission, if you will, to forget about certain things for now. So, people are talking about empowered workers or, all of these different types of things. And it's like, we're not even close to ready for, people on the shop floor with all of this, technology in their hands and that kind of thing. We have a number of steps we have to take before that. The folks that I'm working with from Sesame, who have just been so helpful and insightful and really have dug into my business. They are not constantly, but at times saying, Cici, you are way out over your skis, like pull back. It's not time for this yet. I know that's an exciting, like we just said, an exciting, shiny new toy that you could do this whole ERP system. But honestly, until you get a little bit more ready, it's just not going to be the best use of your time, money, all of your limited resources. So, that has been truly very, very helpful, is the permission to just say, okay, that can wait for a minute and let's do something else.
Yeah, that's really telling. I think if I could restate what I think I hear you saying is there are quite a few foundational things you need to address. First, when you talk about ISO certification and other things like that, what are some of the other foundational things that you discovered that you decided you wanted to address before you got into some of the technology?
Well, while we try to collect data, and of course we have a QuickBooks system and that kind of thing, but in terms of, we couldn't have told you before this how much each of our machines on the shop floor is being used. For example, if you had a connected IoT thing going, we would know all of that. We have now manually collected that data. So we now know which machines are being utilized 75% of the time, 25% of the time, all of that, which will really help to feed into understanding potential bottlenecks and getting ahead of that, so that as we start to move towards, let's say, a digitalization program, which areas might be most important for us to do first. And so, for example, we know that inventory, I just ran a report the other day, 1,200 raw material items that go into our, it's an insane number.
Wow.
That's not inventorying product. That's just components or raw material. That's probably our biggest hurdle. So, it's helped to take a step back. Okay, before you get cobots and robots going, let's understand the inventory situation and that kind of data.
And if we could stick with that for just a second. So are you able to see return on investment from those activities, just manually collecting the data? You're seeing value. You mentioned the reports you're running and having better visibility. So are you seeing a productivity improvement or better communications with your team just from doing it manually?
No, I mean, the answer is not yet on that. I think what it has helped us to do is to prioritize better and see where. So as we're looking at, back to the example of looping the bells, right? 50% of our business, as you talked about before, what is making compressed gas cylinders. And, that's not the fun part that everybody wants to talk about, but that's where the money is, right? And it's, it's the more profitable end of our business. It's where, bells is a highly mature category that's probably not going to see, anything more than incremental growth, but cylinders, we could see, much more growth. So it's helped us to also take a step back and say, okay, wait a second. let's look at these processes and machinery for the cylinders long before we start to solve this problem with the bells. So it has just helped to drive our path much better at the moment.
Again, I just think it's so powerful what the example that you're articulating shows, because it's really difficult. Mike started off talking about how we're advocating for a future of, industry 4.0 adoption and acceptance and things like that. And so if the focus is always on the technology in some future state where we're all digitally connected and things like that, it oftentimes turns people off to saying, well, I'm not ready for that yet, or what have you. But to have that vision that you're painting, and then, building the steps that put you in a position to then have that conversation, I think is just extremely valuable.
That's great.
I wanted to also ask you a question about the process. So, you're leading the company. What did you personally learn that surprised you? Anything that you would want to comment about there?
Since I've started this process, you mean?
Yeah. So what was it? What as a leader, what did you learn from the process? Anything in particular that you might want to share?
Part of what I've learned, and this conversation is a perfect example of that. And I don't know if this is really going in the direction that you want, but to be honest with you, putting myself out there and being very honest about our challenges, being very honest about our vision, and really connecting with as many people as I can, have brought so many opportunities and resources our way that I never would have expected. So I think part of my biggest learning, honestly, as a leader, is that there are so many people and resources and things out there to help you and guide you, that just putting yourself out there constantly has really just brought us so much opportunity and help.
No, I thank you for sharing that perspective. One of the things, I have this perception from my own experience in manufacturing, you tend to get focused on delivering for today's client, today's challenges, right? And you run the risk of not looking out there to seeing what you can learn from others, because you have plenty to do inside the company. And so I think what you just shared, such a tremendous learning for leaders, manufacturing leaders, is that you have to stop and look out there and learn from others and take advantage of it. Doesn't mean you're going to do everything you learn, but it just provides you a lot more perspective, especially, I know your company's not as big as some of them that are out there, right? So, you tend to not have a lot of extra folks to do that. So you've got to make sure you're taking the time to do that. So
right, exactly. I don't have a team I can send out into the field and report back and that kind of thing. It's, we're really lean here. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate the perspective, and I do think that's an important takeaway for manufacturing leaders, the small and mid-sized companies especially.
Yeah, and I would just add to that I have reached out to people and taken advantage of the opportunity to just visit so many other manufacturing operations. And at the same time, I've opened up my factory for other people to come here and go through it who are involved in the industry. Not that they're candidly going to learn a lot from me at this point, but, I'm very grateful to just go see what and I just was at another manufacturer this morning in the aerospace industry. It has nothing to do with what I do, but just meeting with him, and we were trading a lot of information on, operating systems and that kind of stuff. So it's just always very insightful.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It is. And I just share anecdotally. So I live in Cleveland, Ohio area, and we had an event come here last fall, and I asked several of the smaller manufacturers in the region to present and speak at the event and attend. And many of them were sort of taken aback, like, well, what story do I have to tell? What are people going to get out of what I'm talking about? And in the end, 4 different companies presented, and every single session was very well attended, very well received. The connections that were made have spawned, a group of people that are now starting to connect and do the things like you're talking about. And one of the participants said to me afterwards, what you just said, like, I had no idea there were so many resources available to us and so many things going on that we could be a part of. Right. So I think you are sharing wisdom here that is really, really valuable.
Good.
Well, you mentioned connecting. I know earlier with SESME, What are some of the other organizations and or that you connect with locally to help you in your journey?
Well, it's so funny. I mentioned this meeting I was just at this morning with another colleague that has a factory, and we were talking about the state of Connecticut, because the state of Connecticut has put just a dramatic amount of resources behind manufacturing and really is working so hard. You know, I'm not sure what's going on in other states, but I would venture to say that it'd be hard to rival what Connecticut is doing in terms of supporting manufacturing in this state. And so there's organizations here. In fact, there's probably candidly too many organizations. Sometimes it can be a bit challenging to remember them all and how to navigate them. But, you know, we have CCAT, the Center for Advanced Technology. We have CONSTEP, which is a quasi governmental group that consults. They're helping take us through the ISO process. There's all kinds of funding grants available in terms of upskilling your workers and investing in technology and bringing in machinery and equipment and that kind of thing. So those have been very, very valuable to us. CBIA is an organization that, you know, is a business, you know, they help us with everything from HR to, you know, legal matters and lobbying and that kind of thing. And we have you know, there's an Office of Manufacturing in the state. A gentleman named Paul Lavoie is our chief manufacturing officer. And he just, you know, runs around the state, bumping up manufacturing and getting us all more excited and energized. It's really exciting time to be here in Connecticut.
Yeah, I think what the takeaway there is, and for anybody listening, you know, find out who locally is there to help you. I think, you know, for the small and mid-sized folks, whether we talk about SESME as a national organization, but also your local organizations, there are a lot of resources available. And I think the question, you know, when you took over the role, how did you go find out about all these organizations?
That, you know, it's just been a little bit of a scavenger hunt. And every time I do something, I hear about two more things. And, you know, I found out about SESME because I went to a conference called East Tech, which is, you know, a trade show with some sessions. And I just attended a session that was called, you know, what is smart manufacturing? I was like, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Let me go to this session. And, you know, that led me to something else. And then, you know, I will have some organization will approach me and, you know, I just keep following every rabbit trail that comes my way. I guess I'm a curious person and I'm into continuous learning. So that's part of my nature.
One of the things that always concerns me meeting a person like yourself, Cici, is that others will look and say, well, she's a unicorn, right? Like she's the president of the company. She has the authority to do this stuff. And oftentimes we'll connect with people that, you know, maybe they're mid-level managers or maybe they're engineers on the floor and they saw something at East Tech or they've heard something from CCAT and they want to follow it and see where it goes. Could you give any advice to someone in that position that doesn't necessarily have the authority or position that you have, that if they're going to make a case to you about why, you know, someone in your position should listen to them, whether it's for, you know, going to a SESME event or taking on, you know, sort of the journey that you're on, any advice for somebody that would try to convince their leadership why they should do something like this?
I think always with something like that, it's, you know, what's the benefit to the company, not what's the benefit to me, right? And I think when I have staff or employees that want to do something and learn something, you know, it will certainly benefit them, no question, but they'll be able to bring something more back to the company. And so I think, you know, being able to talk about areas of curiosity or growth, or I think I would hope that most leaders would love an employee that's putting some effort into trying to do something new or learn something new. I mean, I'm thrilled by that. We just had 2 employees that we sent back to college. They were so excited to, you know, they gave up their nights and their weekends and everything to go do this. You know, I think bringing that kind of knowledge back to the company is super helpful. So I guess just I would frame it that way.
Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So maybe I just want to bring us to talk about your presentation for a minute. Mike mentioned you're going to be speaking at MD&M East on May the 20th. What do you hope those who attend your presentation will take away from your talk?
I hope the biggest thing that they'll take away is that don't be overwhelmed by this. We're a company, and, if you see pictures in our factory, as I said earlier, we're firmly lodged in the 1950s. It can feel very, very overwhelming of where to even begin. And I hope that this will help people understand the steps, at least that we took, that I feel are pretty, replicable, and that other people could sort of follow this path and do something that feels really big, and, as we used to call it, a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And be able to break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Very good. Well, we've been talking with Cici Bevin for the last 25, 30 minutes or so about her upcoming presentation at MDM East. And she's going to be making a presentation talking about 200 years is never too late to start your manufacturing journey. So really appreciate your time today. Mike, maybe start with you. Any final thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know that people understand even just what we've talked about in this short period of time, how insightful what Cici has delivered really is. So I would strongly encourage people to get there. I mean, having the vision to triple the size of the company, you talk about being, stuck in the 1950s or looking like you're in the 1950s, but you're not thinking that way. And you've been around since before the 1950s, right? So I think having that vision, having, and I would assume in the markets you're in, they're pretty mature markets, but they come out and say, we're going to triple the size of the company, and then look at where technology fits in support of those goals is absolutely the right way to be doing it. And so I think it's very valuable, and I hope people will join us in New York next month.
Cici, how about you? Any final thoughts for our audience before we wrap up?
No, I'm very much looking forward to attending the conference. I'm very much looking forward to hopefully some good Q&A as well, and being able to see where other people are on their journey, and hopefully I can provide some insights from mine.
Oh, thank you very much. So I want to thank Mike and Cici for joining us today to give us a preview of Cici's presentation in MDN East, which again will be happening on May the 20th at the Javits Center in New York City. We hope you decide to join the Industry 4.0 Club and Cici at the event. If you'd like to register, here's the website. Please go there and register. It's not too late. We're like 3 weeks away or so from being in New York, and looking forward to seeing everybody there. Cici's going to be speaking on the Advanced Manufacturing stage at 1:45 p.m. So we're excited about that. So just to kind of wrap up, the Industry 4.0 Club would like to encourage you to take action to advance the deployment of Industry 4.0. Read an article, attend a workshop, attend an event like MDN East, or start a smart manufacturing roadmap, or convince your leadership to do so. We want to know what you're doing to advance the deployment of Industry 4.0. So please leave us a note on our website at www.industry40club.com or at our LinkedIn page. We also routinely host conversations like these weekly. So we'd love to have you as a guest if you're interested. Again, if that's something of interest to you, let us know at our website or our LinkedIn page. So with that, again, thanks, Cici, thanks, Mike, and we wish everybody a good rest of the day and good rest of the week.
Thank you.
Excellent. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.